Okay, welcome back to my review of Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. This is part 2 of my review because we ran out of time with part 1 and there are other things that I do really want to get to. I don't want to sacrifice them. So if you are joining me for the first time, feel free to check out part 1 and I will try to leave the link below, but if I don't, just go to my playlist, Harry Potter, and look for Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince review part 1. We started talking about the spoilers, my spoiler version of this review, and I got about 3/4 of the way through, but I didn't want to rush anymore. So this is a spoiler version still of Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. So if you have not read this book, I want there to be spoiler warnings here so that you don't get spoiled unintentionally. I am going into spoilers, so let's get right into it. This is my review of Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince spoiler version, part 2. Okay, so in part 1, I was talking about how Harry uses the Bezoar to save Ron from choking to death and dying, basically. I love the homage, however you say that word, to book 1, where Harry is in his very first ever potions class and Snape says, if I asked you to tell me, where would you tell me? I don't even remember how he says it, but basically Snape says something like, where would I find a Bezoar? And Snape has no idea, which is funny because that takes me back to Chamber of Secrets. The first time that I read Chamber of Secrets, my first answer, the very first time I read book 2, reading that scene was in the cupboard, because you have a potions cupboard right over there, so I assume you will get it from the cupboard. But Harry says, I don't know, sir. Anyway, Snape ends up saying you find it in the stomach of a goat, and then obviously in this book we learn more about Bezoars because of the potions class with Slughorn. It's coming back to me. The potions class with Slughorn, where Slughorn asks the students to come up with a remedy to a poison or something, that everyone gets a random poison, and Slughorn wants the students to come up with an antidote for whichever random poison they've received. And the Half-Blood Prince gives Harry some information. Well, a Bezoar works for most poisons. So Harry, so good, I love it. Harry goes and gets the Bezoar from the cupboard, and when, or the store cupboard, whatever you call it. And then when Slughorn's doing his rounds, going, this is good, this is okay, and Harry shows the Bezoar in his hand, Slughorn says, what cheek, but I can't deny you're right. And it's so good. But anyway, obviously then we have the other Bezoar moment, which is the one I'm referring to, where Ron is dying and Harry shoves the Bezoar down his throat while Slughorn does nothing. He's absolutely useless as a teacher. Except for the liquid luck and his modified memory, there is no need for Slughorn to be there at all. So anyway, just had to make that point. Let's move on. So we have an interesting moment in this book where Dumbledore is telling Harry that Voldemort applied to be the Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher either just after he left or the year he was leaving for the following year or something like that. Really, either soon to him graduating or very soon after he graduated, he wanted that job. And it makes sense. Whether you're thinking of him as Tom Riddle or him as Lord Voldemort, he succeeded in a lot of things at school, so he would make a good teacher, if we're not thinking about all the bad things he did. But, he would make a good teacher. He did really well in Defense Against Dark Arts, so it makes sense that you would want to hire him. But the principal at the time, Professor Dippet, says to him, look, take some time out of school, go do something else, and then if you still want to do it after a couple of years, then I'll hire you, but it's too soon now. Fine, fair enough. So Voldemort goes off, does what he does, and then eventually comes back to Dumbledore and says, hey, Dumbles, I want this job. Professor Dippet said, I think he says something like, I'm here to, because Voldemort, regardless of everything he's done, he's always very well spoken, and that's part of the charisma, obviously, of Tom Riddle. And he says, I'm here to, I'm here to request the job that Professor Dippet once owed to me or something like that. And of course, Dumbledore denies him. Dumbledore then goes on to make a point to Harry saying, look, every time Voldemort has ever, or Tom has ever asked for the role, he's always been denied. And it's worth noting that ever since the first time Dumbledore denied him that role of teacher of Defense Against the Dark Arts, that we have not been able to find a teacher to be with us longer than a year. And so the association that readers are meant to make with this is that because of Voldemort, there is a curse that's been placed on the Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher job, and that whatever teacher is hired, instead of as Voldemort's replacement, because Voldemort can't be hired, won't last longer than a year. Now, that took a lot to get out, but my point is, that's a little far-fetched as far as I'm concerned. It's really hard to wrap my mind around Voldemort set a curse on these. I think I can take it, but I can take it more with a grain of salt. Going, okay, yeah, it makes sense. I mean, it's a coincidence, but I guess it makes sense. So I just had to make the point of that. Yes, Dumbledore makes that point. Yes, I, generally speaking, trust Dumbledore no matter what he says and just go off blind faith that he's telling the truth. But this one was a lot for me to wrap my head around. So now we're going to talk about Hepzibah Smith. Now, I did not speak about all of the times that Harry and Dumbledore go into the Pensieve, but there's a reason for that. I don't care about most of them, so I do care about when Voldemort was an orphan, and I do care about the one I'm about to tell you about, but the other ones, I don't know, they just don't really interest me. I get why they are there, because they fill in blanks that we don't know, and they go on to explain. They make a lot of connections for us, and I get that, but they just don't intrigue me. But the second Pensieve memory moment that does intrigue me is when Harry and Dumbledore go back to revisit the memory from Hoki, the house elf, for her mistress, Hepzibah Smith, who is someone that Riddle goes to, I think, sell her something. So by this point, because Tom Riddle does not get a job to work as the teacher for the Defense Against the Dark Arts class at Hogwarts, he ends up going instead to work with Borgin of Borgin and Burke's, or Borgin or Burke or whatever. He ends up working at Borgin and Burke's, the dark arts magic shop in Nocturne Alley in Diagon Alley. Anyway, or next to Diagon Alley. It's taking a lot to explain this little thing, but anyway, while he's there, one of Borgin or Burke's, whatever, most valuable customers is Hepzibah Smith. While Tom is visiting Hepzibah Smith, she decides to show him some special things that she has collected over her time, and she has a lot of love for Tom Riddle, despite the fact that she's much older than him. He is very charismatic, and she really appreciates that about him, and that's fine. She ends up showing him 2 objects that end up becoming incredibly important. And if not for these 2 objects, this scene would be one that you could fob over as well. But because of these 2 objects, this scene becomes extremely important. She pulls out 2 objects. One is the cup of Helga Hufflepuff, and the second one is the locket of Salazar Slytherin. Now that we've started working out Horcruxes a little more, we don't really know what they are at this point, but we just know that they're there. It's interesting that Harry and Dumbledore get to go into this memory, and Harry's seeing for the first time objects that are connected to the founders of the 4 houses, the founders of Hogwarts. Then, of course, when we think about Slughorn's memory, the real memory, not the modified one, and we work out what's going on there, obviously there's a massive connection that is made, because Dumbledore tells Harry that Hepzibah Smith was killed a couple of days later, and Hoki says that the house elf said she's the one that committed the murder, to which Harry's like, what? No way. And I said, saying, what? No way. Why would Hoki do it? Yeah, naturally it wasn't Hoki. She was put under the Imperius curse, but Tom went back. What we can ascertain is that Tom went back, killed Hepzibah Smith, and stole those 2 items, and intends to use them as Horcruxes. But anyway, that became a very big scene because of those 2 items that, according to Dumbledore, as he suggests, could be Horcruxes. Alright, I'm not going to spend too long talking about Aragog's funeral. but I will start talking about it because what happens before Aragog's funeral and after Aragog's funeral is very important, and so let's do this. Dumbledore keeps telling Harry that he needs to get Slughorn's real memory because the modified one is... It's hard to say. It's modified. It's basically however you can redact a living memory. It's redacted in the important parts and we need to fix this. So, Harry, go get the memory, which I get why Dumbledore knew that Harry could get the memory, but I also understood where Harry was coming from every time he tried to get the memory and he couldn't. And he's thinking, why Dumbledore thinks I can do this? I don't know. But anyway, so... Harry decides to take some Felix Felicius that he won, the liquid luck, from that potions class where he copied what the Half-Blood Prince said, and he's going to go and talk to Slughorn, but the moment he takes the potion, he's inspired to go and see Hagrid, which that was such a brilliant piece of comedy. I loved it. I know that it's what actually happened, but it was just so funny how he's like, okay, I'm going to take this. He's saying to Harry, to Hermione and Ron, I'm going to take the liquid luck and then I'm going to go and see Slughorn and I'll meet you back here later. Takes a sip and he's like, all right, I'm off to Hagrid's. What? Where did Hagrid come from? What do you mean you're off to Hagrid's? So obviously it all does work out in the end that it was just so funny. So, obviously, Harry goes and tracks down Horace Slughorn on the way to seeing Hagrid, and the liquid luck basically gets Harry through everything in such a plot convenience way, but that's okay. I think this is the first time ever that I'm more than fine with there not only being a plot convenience, but multiple plot conveniences in a row, because Harry has taken a potion that is meant to make him lucky no matter what he does. So I'm not upset with these plot conveniences, but he comes across Slughorn, tells Slughorn that, you know, Hagrid's however you say it, Hagrid's spider has died, and Slughorn says the venom's very powerful, you know, and can be sold for a lot of money and all this stuff, and everything just works out for him. Slughorn goes to the funeral, as your body decays. He has that famous, speech, eulogy that he does for Aragog. Bless him, though, because he clearly doesn't want to be there. He just wants the venom, but yet he's able to come up with an on-the-spot eulogy. Bless him. And then, obviously, he and Hagrid start drinking, and the Felix Felicius tells Harry not to drink, and in the end, he's able to coax the real memory out of Slughorn, and then we see that Slughorn indeed spoke to Tom Riddle, who asked... We already knew this with the modified memory, that Tom Riddle had asked Professor Slughorn what a Horcrux is, and in the modified memory, Slughorn says to Tom, I don't know what you're talking about, there is no such thing, now go away and go to bed, and da-da-da-da. Now that we get the actual memory that's not been modified, the memory goes... Tom asks Slughorn about what a Horcrux is. And Slughorn, after a couple of quick questions, I'm sure this is for a project, there's nothing wrong with being curious, tells him a Horcrux is a magical object that contains a part of your soul. Okay, great, now Voldemort knows what it is. And sir, he's so good, and I love, even the way J.K. Rowling wrote it, Harry noticed how Tom had prepared every movement that he made, every word that he said in a way that was just right to get the information he needed. Oh, and it's so true. Well done, Tom, and well done, Harry, when he retrieves the memory, because he does the exact same thing. He knows just the right thing to do and say and how to say it and da-da-da. But sir, what is a Horcrux? No, not what is a Horcrux, but how does someone split their soul and put it into a Horcrux? I mean, I wouldn't ask, but... You're the only one that I think could tell me, and because you're so good. And so, obviously, Slughorn tells him that to split your soul, one must commit the most outrageous thing. They must kill someone. And obviously, we know that the Dark Lord, Lord Voldemort, he who must not be named, whatever you call him, has killed many since then. So we now can at least go under the impression that Voldemort has 7 Horcruxes, at least. Who knows if there's more. But 7 Horcruxes, And because of what we learned from the prophecy in the last book, in the Order of the Phoenix, that neither can live while the other survives, Harry has to kill all the Horcruxes, or however you put it, destroy all the Horcruxes. So in my notes, I didn't really include the cave scene with Dumbledore and Harry. I read it, then I reread it, and it just doesn't mean as much to me. And I literally mean in this reading, I've read the chapter of Harry being in the cave with Dumbledore and trying to get the locket. And then I read it again in this reread. I went back to the start of the chapter and read it again, and it just doesn't mean as much to me as it used to. Yes, Dumbledore's writhing around in agony and all that stuff that's going on, but it just doesn't interest me as much as it used to. So I didn't write it down. If you've read it, I'm sure you know of what I'm referring to, and I'm sure you've seen a lot of other people reviewing that portion of the book. But I'm going to move on and discuss with you Draco and Dumbledore. So Dumbledore comes back. A lot of people have spoken about how there's a plot hole in this book in that Harry and Dumbledore somehow get back to Diagon Alley, but we don't really know. It's kind of been cut out. But I honestly don't mind that because, again, if that was included, it would just be filler to me. I don't think it's needed. We can jump ahead in time. I'm fine with that. Anyway, so they get back to the school eventually, and Draco tries to kill Harry. I'm sorry, no. Draco doesn't try to kill Harry, although that might have been an interesting way to do things. Draco tries to kill Dumbledore. That whole scene is probably one of the single best scenes that J.K. Rowling has written. I remember the first time I read it thinking, oh my god, Dumbledore's going to die. Draco is more evil than I ever thought he was, because a lot of the time I kind of agreed with Hermione, who, no matter what book it is, keeps saying to an obsessed Harry, what do you mean it's Draco? Draco's a student. Malfoy he's not doing anything. And I agreed with her, thinking he's a student. Why is Harry so obsessed? But anyway, so my first thought was, oh my god, he is evil. Oh my god, he's going to kill Dumbledore. Why? Why is he killing Dumbledore? There's no need. Dumbledore's a pureblood. It just doesn't make sense. Yeah, okay, Voldemort always feared, as they say, Dumbledore, but Draco never feared Dumbledore, so why? And obviously it all comes out. I love how Dumbledore is making a very calm point, not a panicked point, but a very calm point to Draco, saying, come over to the good side, we can protect you. You know, you don't need to do this. You're not a killer. It's okay. And we'll protect your mum as well, and when your dad gets out of jail, we'll protect him as well. Come over to the good side, Draco. It's all good. Can you imagine how things would have gone if Draco said, all right, I will, and Dumbledore had just enough time to grab Harry, who he has petrified so that Harry doesn't get involved in anything, but grab Draco, grab Harry, and apparate somewhere far away, and gosh, that would have been interesting. But anyway, clearly it doesn't happen. Then we have the whole Snape thing. Snape comes up and Draco can't kill Dumbledore because he just can't. He's too good as far as good versus evil. There's too much good in him to kill Dumbledore. And I really appreciate that because to me, that is redemption for Draco Malfoy. It may not always continue. We may still be considering, is he good or is he evil? J.K. Rowling says he's evil. But anyway, so that's book canon. Draco Malfoy is an evil person, according to the author, J.K. Rowling. To me, the fact that he couldn't kill Dumbledore makes him more good than I think a lot of people want to believe that he is. So that was a redemption arc for me, for Draco Malfoy. Anyway, Snape comes up the stairs and he kills Dumbledore. And it's a sad moment for so many reasons. First of all, we have a little gem that gets addressed in the 6th book, but I'll just quickly say what it is here. Dumbledore, when Snape comes up the stairs, Dumbledore says Severus, Snape's first name, Severus, please, and then Snape kills him, and we don't know why Dumbledore is saying Severus, please. But the most likely impression that readers and Harry definitely has, is that Dumbledore is saying, Severus, please don't kill me. And then Severus, Snape kills Albus Dumbledore. And it is one of the hardest things to go through. Sirius's death in order? Yeah, the book before. Oh, wow, 2 deaths in 2 books in a row. Sirius's death was tough to go through, but Dumbledore's was so much tougher for me. Dumbledore was this stable character that was always going to be there. He's the one that Voldemort fears the most. As long as you're around, as Hermione Granger says, if you're around Dumbledore, you're safe. If you're around Dumbledore, you can't be touched. You can't be harmed. Dumbledore was this wizard that just seemed like he was immortal. He wasn't, but he seemed like he was. And now he's dead. And so it's a massive shock. The way the chapter ends as well, I need to comment on, because I was thinking it at the time as I was reading it. J.K. Rowling writes it in a powerful way. The last couple of lines is, don't quote me, but it's something along the lines of Dumbledore was gone and Harry knew it. He had left Harry. Harry was all alone. Something like that. And when you read those sentences, it just gets worse and worse and worse. Like, oh my God. So she wrote that really well. But yeah, Dumbledore's gone. Harry knows it's Snape. The moment Dumbledore dies, Harry is no longer petrified. He can run after Snape, and he does, blood boiling and not caring about anything else. He doesn't care if he dies. He just wants to kill Snape because he's angry. Dumbledore trusted you and you betrayed him and da-da-da-da. We do, of course, also get the reveal that Snape is the Half-Blood Prince, but honestly, I only cared about that the first time I read the book. I no longer care about it because I know what's going in. But, yeah, interesting. And then Snape flies away with the Death Eaters, which confirms for everyone, I'm sure, that Snape is evil. Because 1, Dumbledore said, Severus, please. 2, Snape kills Dumbledore. 3, Snape leaves with the Death Eaters. He doesn't stay at Hogwarts. So, I think we've answered the question that Snape is evil. But during the transition between this book being released and the final book being released, a lot of people were talking about, is Snape good or evil? And I think it was even mentioned by J.K. Rowling, you will get the answer to that question in the last book. But Snape certainly seems evil by the end of this book, for sure. No remorse, he kills Dumbledore, he leaves with the Death Eaters, he's abandoning Hogwarts. Pfft, seems evil to me. One of the hardest things to read in this book is when Harry reads the note inside the locket from R.A.B. saying that this is not the actual Horcrux. He took the R.A.B., whoever R.A.B. is, took the original one and is planning on destroying it. This is so crushing for so many reasons. 1, yes, naturally, because it's not the actual Horcrux. And that is something that is important to know, because we don't know if that Horcrux has been destroyed or not. All the note says is, I've taken the real one, replaced it with a fake one, and I'm going to destroy it, but we don't even know who R.A.B. is. That is tough. But then when you connect that to, really, the reason why Dumbledore died was because of the fake Horcrux. If Dumbledore had have known that it was a fake Horcrux and hadn't left the castle, he would have been pre-warned with the Death Eaters. He would have escaped, like he did in Order of the Phoenix when he escapes Umbridge and the Minister of Magic, Fudge, and he would still be alive. So Dumbledore is dead, and now we're piling on from Dumbledore is dead to Dumbledore is dead, but for no reason. And that just makes it even worse and just makes you want to... J.K. Rowling, she's so good with provoking emotions. So after all that, Harry goes to the hospital wing where a couple of things happen, a couple of people have been injured. Bill Weasley, who we don't know that much about at all, because he really doesn't spend a lot of time with us, but Bill was attacked by Fenrir Greyback, however you say that name, and who is a werewolf, and so there is fears that he is going to be a werewolf, but Lupin, who is there, who we know is one, says it's more than likely that he won't be, because he wasn't bitten on a full moon, but I do think he'll have some werewolf attributes, like wanting raw meat or something. Now, at the beginning of this book, when we're at the Burrow with Mrs. Weasley and others, there are more people at the Burrow than we've had there before, including Fleur Delacour from Harry Potter and the Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, who is the representative for the Beauxbatons Academy, and we learned a little bit about her in that book. In this book, the reason she's come back is because she's going to be marrying Bill, which is pretty cool, so we get to see her again. I never really liked Crumb, but I thought Fleur was okay, so when I saw that Fleur was back in this one, I was really happy. Mrs. Weasley does not like Fleur at all, probably because she's trying to marry her son and she doesn't like her. Ginny doesn't like Fleur and keeps calling her Flem, and Hermione does not call her Flem, but Hermione doesn't really like her either. Now that Dumbledore is dead and everything that's played out, whatever's happened has happened, in this hospital wing situation, Mrs. Weasley is there to see her son and Fleur is there to see her fiancé, and there is a major moment between Fleur and Mrs. Weasley that I just loved, where Fleur says, you know, Mrs. Weasley putting ointment on Bill, and Fleur makes the point that she's going to stand by him. She says some line to Mrs. Weasley like, oh, you thought I would just leave him? I would just abandon who he is? And all this kind of... I'm not French, even though my name is. I would abandon him and everything that he is because he's a werewolf. He is my fiancé, and I will take that. Taking the ointment away from Mrs. Weasley. I will do that. I am his fiancé. And, oh, God, it's so good because as much as I love Mrs. Weasley, Fleur had every right to say, step aside, I am his fiancé, but more importantly, I love him no matter what, and you need to get this. And so Mrs. Weasley ends up breaking down, they have a hug, and it's a beautiful moment, which leads to Tonks saying that... saying to Lupin that they should get married, and she's been saying it all this time and we never knew, and Lupin's trying to make objections as to why they shouldn't get married, and everyone else is piping in saying, Remus, I always thought you were being stupid when you said this, and I think you should get married too, and it just sparks such a great conversation. Then Harry tells everyone that Dumbledore is dead, and McGonagall has her reaction, and now she is just... automatically she becomes head mistress of the school because she's deputy headmistress, so, or vice headmistress, whatever you want to call it. And so now, suddenly, she's in charge, even though she's dealing with the fact that Dumbledore's dead, and I find it hard to believe, but McGonagall didn't know. McGonagall is so smart, and she catches everything. That it surprises me, she didn't know this, but she's like, what? He's dead? Snape killed him? Really? Where have you been, Minerva? But anyway, happy to call her Minerva because I have so much respect for her. But anyway, where have you been, Minerva? Seriously. But then after a moment or so, after she hears everything, I absolutely respect her professionalism because she then starts acting like the headmistress and saying, okay, can you and you do this and this? I need a word with Potter for a moment, and then after that we're going to have a staff meeting to try and work out what we're going to do and where we're going to go from here, because they're talking about trying to close the school, which is insane in my opinion. I get it. Dumbledore's dead, and with Dumbledore not being there, how long can you keep Hogwarts open? But no! I get that McGonagall is so emotionally tied to what has happened to Dumbledore that she can't think clearly at this point in time. I get that. But why, aside from that, why would you close the school just because Dumbledore is no longer there? There are children, these children need to learn. This is the only school that we know of in this vicinity, the closest school being, I think, Beauxbatons, I think. But yeah, why would you close Hogwarts down? It just doesn't make sense. But anyway, that's what they're planning on doing. But before that, McGonagall does take a moment alone with Harry, and she asks him to tell her exactly what he's been doing with Dumbledore this whole time, and Harry doesn't budge one little bit. He says, nope. I knew that you were going to ask me, like, because it says in the book, Harry knew this question was coming. I knew you were going to ask me, but he told me I can't tell anyone except for Ron and Hermione, so I'm going to stick with that. I get it. I get both sides, okay? I am on the fence with this one. Harry is Dumbledore's boy through and through. I get that. He made a promise. He doesn't want to tell McGonagall because he promised Dumbledore. I get that. But I also get why McGonagall is saying yes, but you would think, considering everything that's happened, that you would tell me. I get the loyalty to Dumbledore, but I also get why McGonagall needs to know. And I'm on the fence with it. Anyway, so then that leads to ultimately to the funeral. And it's a very sad funeral, and yeah, it's hard to say goodbye to, arguably, with this reread, my favourite character of the whole series. There is something so incredibly special about Albus Dumbledore and the way that J.K. Rowling writes this character, that to kill him in a really warped way makes sense. He is so loved, and sometimes when it comes to series, death is extremely necessary, and it doesn't mean as much if you kill off a character that no one really cares about. So if Narcissa Malfoy died, I don't think anyone will care. Dumbledore dying, yeah, people are going to care about that. So I get why she did it, but it's still sad that we won't see him anymore because he's dead, and yeah, I just have a lot of love for him. Anyway, so the ending wraps up with something that I loved reading, which was Harry telling Ginny that they can't be together. Yay. Not yay for why, but yay that they can't, because seriously, what was J.K. Rowling thinking? But anyway, we can't be together because if we are, Voldemort's going to find out and he's going to use you to get to me. Now, this makes sense. So I get why they have to break up, and so does Ginny. Ron and Hermione are still together, but Harry says to them, I'm not coming back to school next year regardless of if it opens or not, because we still don't know if it will, because I need to go and search down all these Horcruxes and destroy them. And Ron and Hermione say, well, of course we're going with you, but we can't go till Bill and Fleur's wedding, to which Harry says, what do you mean you're going with me? And they both say, haven't we told you enough times? We're in this to the end. We are not staying behind while you are doing this. It's not going to happen, so don't even try and tell us we are. So Harry agrees that he'll see Bill and Fleur get married first, and then the three of them will go off and hunt Horcruxes, and that's the end of the story. So that is the end, after 2 parts, of my Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince review. I will be reading book 7 very soon, the final book, and then reviewing that, and then we'll have the complete collection. But that's it for this review. Until next time, I'm letting you guys go with peace, blessings, and so much love. Mwah. I post videos every Monday, Thursday, and Sunday, with reviews in between, and I hope that you enjoy whatever it is you're reading. Comments, thoughts, and questions, leave them below. Thank you so much for watching, and happy reading. Bye, guys. Bye.